All right. Circle working session, thinking about how to run the next Circle V4 elections, and working towards the planning for the after town hall next week on Wednesday to bring the community voice into planning how all that's going to. Any thoughts on what Harris just shared around legitimizing the circle by involving more of the community voice and how we go about doing that on Wednesday or other events like Twitter Spaces and the Polis poll and things?
I mean, the other ways to do this would be to maybe launch some sort of influencer campaign, right? Go to speak to Big Pay or, people that we know and see whether there's opportunity to bring about, some content from their channels that then directs people to start playing more of an active role.
In terms of just broadcasting and communicating, Chris, or are you talking about bringing structure to the circle?
I'm talking about if we want to bring more community participation and involvement. I think it's beyond just the mainstay of people, right? I think that's where real legitimacy comes from, when we break out beyond our own echo chamber. So I'm just thinking that could be another way. Like Twitter Spaces is awesome, fantastic. It's likely to reach quite a wide audience. We have obviously our after town halls. But if we want to think about other communities of practice to infiltrate or to get in front of, some of those, we know Big Pay, we know Pratesh, right? I'm sure some of the guys here, obviously we've got Kyle and Quasar even runs, you run your own Twitter Spaces and other things, right? So my point is just that if we want to think about participation and getting some fresh perspectives, then maybe thinking about how we get outside of our own box would be a good route for doing that.
So would Wednesdays after town hall, would that be to present the Polis poll, or you want to get that out earlier? And is that to discuss what is the circle all about, or is it to talk about the election?
I think there's two objectives. That's what it sounds like. They're two separate objectives.
I thought it was a really good suggestion that this team kind of came up with, right? To do the Twitter Spaces and to run the Polis poll. I don't know when the Twitter Spaces are. I don't know how we're engaging in those. So I thought it was a great suggestion, but who's doing what? I think we should probably determine that. I mean, we could front load it and just say, hey, we're going to have this Polis poll, and the after town hall session is just going to be, we're going to send you this link. But I do think we can reach a pretty broad audience if we have it prepared and we send it out in advance. And that way, at least we have a start to the discussion, and we can actually bring some of that data into that discussion, which is kind of how we ran sort of the code of conduct sort of stuff, which I thought was beneficial. And we do have that. And just as a quick update on that specifically, we've engaged the attorneys within IO to come out with a version that we'll share with all of you here in the next week or two.
So I'm thinking Nori, he had created that poll, but he's going to be away for some time, and I'm going to be going on vacation in about a week for about 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know who should. Maybe we can bring the poll up, see what's there, and then figure out who should manage it at this point.
Yeah, I'm happy to kick it off and share the reporting links and everything, because there's not a whole lot of management involved. You have both of those links. It's just kind of looking at the results and adding, unless we need to trim statements or things like that. But
I do believe that you would be the admin, and so if we needed to change anything or change a setting, that couldn't be done by anyone except for yourself. But we certainly could watch the results come in and continue to blast the link out.
yeah, so that's a good point. If you think you're going to want to tweak the settings at that level, then I might not be the best person to actually kick it off.
No, I don't. I'm just stating that's a constraint. I think it's fine. Yeah, I didn't make any changes when I set it up after I launched it.
So maybe we take a look at what's on the poll, because there may be, I don't know what direction we want to lead or kind of guide or frame it so that we get the responses we're looking for, because there's a lot of different comments on there, and there may be some I put on there that might not be acceptable.
Yeah, we need to look at those CCv3. I'm looking at the doc right now, and there's a bunch of questions in there, and that's not appropriate for poll lists. Poll lists are statements that people can agree or disagree with. So we need to change those into statements rather than questions for the ones that are questions. Chris, and then Tommy.
I was going to say, in terms of sort of managing and sort of distribution, initial distribution, we can use the Catalyst weekly mailer as maybe the first place to publish, or the primary place to publish, and then that goes out to everybody that's signed up to our mailing list, which is, in the order of 50,000 people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that, whatever that number is. Danny knows the number, but what my point is like, we can probably get IO to direct some traffic towards that poll from like the social media account. My worry with that is, we might get some trolls, right? You might get people that are not part of the Catalyst community and have no intention of being part of the Catalyst community participating, and then muddying the mix. I'm thinking about that as I was sort of saying about the outreach to influencers and trying to get content and people talking about it. We don't want a whole load of fudsters coming in and muddying our data, right?
Mm-hmm. But I think even those disconfirming views would be useful for people to at least disagree with en masse, and then the way poll list works, I'm not sure it would be that much of a deal unless they're totally outrageous. But
yeah, it's because it's only it's up or down or add your own, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we can review and sort of go through a filtering process, and like if something, is it appropriate or does it make sense, we can just weed it out.
Tommy.
Yeah, hi. I started just jotting down things in that document because I thought that it's like a free for all, jot down whatever. So I read, or I am actually reading Chris's original document or blog post about the circle and what it should be, but that was written like a year ago. So should we like revise that? Like, are those things still valid? And then after that, maybe check with the community.
So we certainly have the ability to just run with our definition as it stands, right? But I think sort of the initiative it sounded like the circle wanted to take was to try to check what those assumptions are to bring legitimacy, right? So I don't know. Ideally, we could just rewrite it, and that's great. Here's a different approach, and to have that as a straw man of a new approach with changes, so we can go that route. Or we can get feedback from the community and then lean that into a revised version, which is kind of the way I was thinking about it, but it's certainly open to you guys' ideas.
Yeah, the latter one was my understanding of the way the circle wanted to proceed, was to get feedback from the community, input on what they think the purpose, structure, and all that with the circles should be. And this is our opportunity to sense and listen, I guess.
Maybe short feedback there. Nori, Joey, you have been there as well. It was now 2-3 weeks ago where we had this one session as well about the Catalyst Circle. So you gave a short introduction about what is Catalyst Circle, what are the problems and challenges we face right now. And I think the outcome of all this was also to say a little bit, the current circle is maybe much more a working group, which tries to figure out, okay, how we need things to get improved for circle version 4, and really focus on reframing the whole thing, because since your very first blog post in Fund 6 or 7, Chris, there haven't been any updates on the Catalyst Circle structure, purpose, intention, and whatnot. And to really take this time and the people here to say, hey, okay, let's start a reset. Let's start from scratch, but with the experience we made so far. Because we see how Circle evolved now, it isn't really effective. So yeah, but moving a step back and starting to say, okay, how can we structure the whole thing here in a way that it makes sense and in a way that it engages the community as well, right? Because right now Circle creates friction and disalignment in the community, which are very sad outcomes. And yeah, and sorry for the background noises.
Thanks, Chris.
I'd quite like to challenge the idea that Circle creates friction. Is it the personal relationships that has created friction, or is it the objectives and focus of Circle? I think we need to be careful not to conflate two different things. And what I can see from my personal perspective, and this is just my personal opinion, the friction has largely come from, you know, the degradation of personal relationships, more so than the process.
Both. I would say the process is not clear. As the process is not clear, it's not clear for circle reps themselves how to coordinate and act between them, which happens then if you. And that you're definitely true. The misalignment definitely is caused also by personal relations between reps. But yeah, this is reflected to the outside then, and the community only receives what we receive in the inside as well. But
Joey, then Harris.
Yeah, I agree with Chris that we basically have kind of like been our own worst enemy by the internal conflicts. But Nadia proves that, hey, the circle can operate and can function like the original intention, that we can listen and we can organize and we can have a function in the community. So I think the circle itself is, even in the past, everything that you guys did in Circle 1 and 2, Felix, you guys did a lot of stuff in the community. But I think the Circle 3, just internally, we just kind of shot ourselves in the foot, so to speak. But the circle itself, I think, functions. We just don't have bylaws or any type of methods to handle conflicts within the circle, and how to, even the one about how to remove someone from the circle, or how to engage each other when there are conflicts. We need some kind of processes within our own circle.
Thanks, Joey. Harris.
Yeah, I definitely feel like, you know, there's it seemed like a sentiment, I guess, that, you know, like, what does a circle do? And you know, every single town hall, we were describing what we did pretty clearly. but there was still a misunderstanding. And so that's why having this sort of community cross-check, I thought was really valuable to be like, okay, hey, we're now listening, we want to take input from the community in terms of what we should be doing in terms of how we do that. And so, that was definitely something I thought was a great idea. It allows us to sort of reset. Now we have input from the community that's going to help us write that down into sort of the structure of what it is we do, which will determine how much time it's going to take to do certain things. I love the idea of subcircles and running with that, right? But we do need to make definition of how does that work? Are there any elected positions now? Is it just all like people are pulled in and out by each of those groups? Are we naturally doing this? Are we doing an election? Are we electing one person and then they're organizing the subcircles? These are decisions that we need to kind of make, and ideally we're making those with input from the community from the start, right? So that way, okay, hey, we had a great discussion, and it's not just us in our vacuum, coming up with stuff and then people disagreeing with it. So at least we'll have some weight because we brought it to the community.
Thanks, Eris. Yeah, I agree. Just to throw in my 2 cents is, I think looking back at the past 3 circles, there are certain positions that have struggled because they didn't have a natural community and they were elected into this position to represent people that they weren't connected with. And so they had to try and figure out how to connect and how to find those things. And upon reflection, I'm thinking personally that maybe that's the backwards way of doing it, is having somebody elected and hoping that they go and find the people they're representing and sense their problems. If you turn that around and you start to think about self-evolving subcircles or communities that prove that they have some kind of identity in a group, then they can start to sense problems on their own and then pick one of them to come, either through election or appointment, to come represent their community at the circle. And then there's no awkwardness of an elected rep that has to go find their community. The community is already there and they're sending it to the circle. So it kind of reverses everything. And then the question on functional groups, I think that's really important. Like if you have all these independent communities that are strong, operating, doing stuff in Catalyst and have issues that they're running into, maybe those are the correct things at the moment to bring together to talk about these things, instead of trying to artificially create these structures. Look at what's actually happening and let them come to the table. And yeah, one of my things around decentralization is how do you push sensing, decision-making, and action all the way out to the edges as far as possible. And only when there's things that need to be talked about between circles or between groups, 2 circles could meet, figure something out because it pertains to them and their needs, and they can do it and they're empowered to do so. But if it requires the entire community to come together, then that's where all these different circles come together, these subcircles, to discuss things. And it's only like at the highest point, so that you don't have SPOs actually voting for or trying to do something in some far corner of Catalyst that doesn't pertain. So yeah, it's just, I've been thinking about how all this works, and it seems like starting with a structure and trying to fill it through elections and then connect to a community seems like it wasn't working as well. And you saw the strong communities actually pop out and really do well, like the PA group. They're strong, they have lots of opinionated people that are motivated to do stuff. So Nadia, being a great leader, was able to harness that energy and really do some great things. But then you had other groups that really struggled because they didn't have a natural community, and they spent all of their energy trying to connect to people and figure things out. So why not get rid of that issue by letting communities that are already strong just represent themselves? But yeah, that was kind of my thoughts there.
Maybe we can address a couple of these points that are just coming up in the chat, so we can just socialize and actually discuss them. Tommy, you asked for a list of what those roles are. Well, they're proposers, they're proposal assessors, they're the tool makers, they are the general ADA holder. Who else am I forgetting? There's a CF role. There we go.
SPO.
There we go. SPOs, exactly. Reese isn't here. That's why. So those are the roles that we were for the seats. Be great to know what the 5 functional groups in the GPS are, just so we've got it clarified for the purposes of this thread discussion.
Well, if you want to go that route, I can share the slides again and we can have that as a basis for the discussion. But the roles that you mentioned were some of the roles. What about referees and mentors and D-reps and VPAs and this and that? And does it have to be roles? And is Cardano Foundation a role?
Well, I mean, the CF role is a CF ambassador role, right? That's the current seat. And yeah, you're right. It doesn't cover VPAs. Mentors isn't necessarily like a formal role within Catalyst yet.
Yet, but it might be tomorrow.
Could be.
By the end of the day, if we're throwing our game here.
It's also challenge teams.
Yeah.
Because currently what the community is thinking, that you keep praising, is that maybe we shouldn't even have roles. Maybe we should just have different members on different levels of understanding, doing different things at different parts of the process, different stages. But that's just one part. Then SPOs and all these tool makers and all this is separately. But yeah, so what do we want to do? Do we want to revisit that category thinking, or are you saying we shouldn't go that route? Because it seemed like in the previous meeting, Harry said that he starts to warm up to categories, and Chris was saying that it's a no-go.
No, it's not that I'm saying it's a no-go. I'm saying my opinion is that if we go towards categories, the discussion just really quickly will be directed towards what challenge should be prioritized this time around. And that's what the input from the community will end up being directed to. That's my guess. So, that's why I'm conscious of.
Yeah, I don't know where that understanding is coming from, because, well, I've never said that. And well, this is my first meeting in the circle. So maybe I should introduce the idea before we are actually talking about it. Because it's probably that everyone in this room is a bit confused what we are even talking about. So.
Yeah.
And I think that'll be a valuable conversation with the community for sure. Like, we should at least let the community discuss that. But I think the purpose here is not to figure out the roles or the categories. I think what we wanted to do is figure out how do we plan for and include the community voice to get everyone's opinions on the table over the next little while, so that we have at least a broad range of input from the community on what they think should happen next.
I mean, that kind of question of categories or roles or seats or what are the seats? I mean, that could be in the poll that we send out, right? And that way we can get confirmation of what the community is thinking about that. Because we could slice and dice this all kinds of different ways. There's pros and cons, I think, of each. To do it, but and certainly just so we're not spinning in different directions, that we can certainly put together a new experiment and just put it out there and test it and then learn from it, so we can create a hypothesis and then actually experiment and try it. So that's another way we can do this. But I did agree that, hey, taking some time, get feedback from the community was valuable, which will give us data and insight in terms of the direction we go. And, Tommy, I know you've created some really amazing content, and I'm presuming that's all sort of based on discussions you've had with the community. So maybe that is a reasonable starting point. But
Yeah, exactly. Because I think what is causing, I don't know, friction, but at least confusion among some people in the community is that they feel that Circle is somehow arbitrarily put together, and some random people have been voted in by some process, and they are supposed to represent some groups. But what they would like to see is exactly that what is happening in the community, and then letting it emerge naturally.
Joey, then Quasar.
So going back to your concept, Nori, I was in that presentation where you guys talked about the book a little bit. So if there was no circle, and for example, and this situation like Tommy's talking about between roles and the other item, where would that rise up to, and how would they be represented if there was no representative already in place? I mean, could they just call a meeting, say, hey, we want IOG to meet with us and discuss this? Because this kind of came up from the community, but without a role for it to be represented, how would that happen?
Yeah, and sorry, I'm consciously aware that we're derailing a bit and trying to solve the problem and design the circle rather than figure out next steps for how we get all this input from the community. But I think those are all really great questions and things that we need to discuss with people and get their feedback.
Sure.
Quasar.
I'm afraid what I intended to say is left me. It actually hasn't. We're all, whether it's roles or categories, everyone here on this call, I imagine, we're all serving, we're doing the functions of multiple roles. And so is the community. So it's really, in my opinion, it could be difficult for people to pick a functional group or a category unless there's a real strong reason to do so. I know that's a challenge for me, hey, what isn't? But like the challenge teams, being on Fund 7 and as a challenge team, and then also Fund 8, am I onboarding a cohort, the new funded cohort, or am I onboarding a new challenge fund? And it's at the same time. So there's some overlap of action and just timing and stages that I think could be split out just a little bit and offers a clearer window to look at this through. I'm on the challenge team for the categories for the large one. To me, the categories, they could work, but it's moving back towards a division of labor or product, so to speak. This all looks very similar to industry classifications, which doesn't really breed foster innovation, so to speak. But I like that of innovating and creating an experiment and throwing a hypothesis out there. I love that.
yeah, certainly the spirit, I think, where the circle started, right, was, hey, let's try this. I love the idea of listening for sure. And, I think having the circle exist to identify where there's issues has been tremendous. And I do think that the overall process of how Catalyst has functioned is really improved because of the great focus of the circle, the seats and the subcircles that have formed out of that. It's just been amazingly powerful and helpful to not only to identify the problem, but actually to solve a lot of the pain that was going on in the process. Triggered all kinds of great discussion, a lot of great things, a lot of great leadership has come from that. for sure. And so, I think we have the task of trying to understand, are we electing one person and we're going to, give them decision power? Are we going to hire 5 people for every potential role or category? Are all of those people going to be paid handsomely? What is it they're doing? Because if you're taking a role and splitting it 5 ways, then it's a lot less work. And so maybe there's, less incentive. Maybe because we're doing such hard work, there needs to be more incentive. And so, this is where we really need to sort of draw a line in the sand and say, hey, here's an approach, let's try it. So I do love this slide you're showing, Tommy, but maybe if you want to walk through it would be definitely helpful. And your thoughts on those?
I was trying to find the unmute. Yeah, so how does this work? Okay, so the whole thing started from these 5 different perspectives, that there's collaboration and engagement, structure and processes, infrastructure and ecosystem, products and services, and outreach and impact. And the point was that we look at what we do exactly from those functional perspectives. And if we're talking already in the first blog post about functional groups, then this is what comes to my mind. This is not only based on what is happening in Catalyst, but it's also kind of loosely based on the balanced scorecard from the 1970s onwards that has been used in business life, where they have 4 perspectives, which are organizational learning and growth, internal processes, customer, and financial perspective. But in our case, financial perspective is probably outreach and impact. And the internal processes perspective is split kind of into structure and processes and infrastructure and ecosystem, because this infrastructure and ecosystem that we have is the secret sauce of a blockchain or Web3 based organization, which is decentralized. So it's a little bit different, but kind of based on what has been used in the industry and then modified into impact-driven organization. And then if you look at these things more closely, this pretty much tries to outline everything. This has been done in collaboration with George, so we have tried to capture everything, and we don't really care about what the names are as long as they are broad and unique categories that could be recurring from fund to fund. And the idea would be that there is no challenge setting, but the funding would be given to these categories. And then objective setting could be done by the community to give more midterm or short-term focus on what should people be focusing on within this framework. And in the last meeting you had, there was, I think Stephen said that at least SPO should be there. So if you did take this approach, then you could say that, for example, the infrastructure and ecosystem representative in the circle should be an SPO, stake pool operator. That's just an example, but for different groups, you could have different requirements that they should be this, or it would be preferred that they have this and this and this background. And then you could put it out there and ask people to apply, like you said, on idea scale, for example. And I think Harris was kind of hinting at the possibility of doing this separately from other voting, and maybe the separately could happen during the cool down period that we have between funds. Maybe that could be our recurring governance week, and maybe there could be people then posting their submissions to the circle, and maybe people could have 1 week to vote for whoever they want, and then X number of those people would come in. And it could be changing, like some people could stay for the next one if they were again voted in, and some people could change and whatnot. I don't know. I don't even know if it has to be voted in. Maybe it can be just emergent. But yeah, that's it. And then if you want to simplify it, like what do we actually mean when we are talking about decentralization? So we can decentralize much more than the blockchain itself. We can decentralize value creation, the marketing, the leadership, the governance, all these things. Quasar.
Thanks, Tommy.
Yeah, thanks, Tommy.
Quasar, you had your hand up. Did he just drop, or?
I think it may have still been up.
Yeah, his hand was up.
So I did want to highlight that, it's definitely going to be more straightforward for us to support adding items to a ballot in the short term, instead of waiting for the entire sort of fund vote to happen and do a sort of a special voting session. That's possible, but it is a little bit harder. So the preference would be to try to, even though this phase has passed, because this would be essentially possibly a referendum type vote where we could insert, feedback. So again, information could be collected in various tools. If that information is sort of finalized and then brought in a basically some kind of structured format, we can import that into the back end and then have that available on the ballot. So that would be the preference of doing that. And so we have a little bit more time to add that as a sort of a set of referendum items. But it is something that we would need to hurry up and do if we wanted to go that route. We can certainly explore the idea of having a special vote session, but it's just a bit more work to get that implemented. And again, like there was some really great suggestions, like, okay, if there is a PA group and there's already a community of PA folks, that vote could happen outside of the general election process, right? So I mean, that's kind of what I think we should consider as on the table. SPOs can have their own election and they bring somebody to the table. Right. And General Adehold, I would suggest, is probably one of the candidates that may need to be on a general election, because it's such a wide open role. But establishing value in terms of what that seat accomplishes, I think has been previously defined, and there are actually some pretty reasonable expectations of each of these roles already defined in some of our existing documentation. Maybe that needs to be reflected on, but maybe with the learning and experience that we've had, that maybe the general ADA holder does need to be split into multiple roles as subcircles in various categories or geographies or whatever. But I think if we pose some of those questions, and pose that to the community of what they recommend, we certainly can take some of that insight and have data going into making our next experiment.
Thanks, Harris. Joey.
Yeah, so I think, again, voting from within your own role, it kind of fulfills what Nori was saying. Things would come up from the community you serve, but that's kind of what we've already done. I would hope that if we do that, again, continue with that, the voting process would be consistent and the timing would be consistent, rather than just say this week CA or PA is going to vote for their people and next week we're going to vote ADA, whatever. So I think making sure we have a consistent process is important.
Point. And yeah, and just to reflect, like Harris has brought up holacracy in the past, and they don't have voting or reps. It's called a lead link, where some group decides amongst themselves, however they do it, that this person will represent in that meeting this group. And so it's not like an elected representative with perceived power. It's more just a person burdened with the task of reporting what this group is doing in this other meeting. And I think in a decentralized setting, it's really important to get away from the power kind of pyramidal structures and all the garbage that's associated with that, so that people aren't vying for popularity or notoriety or trying to get some kind of thing because they're at the top and they've been elected in. And that's why, yeah, I keep pushing for like, push it to the edges and don't make this a political thing, make it how we work together and collaborate. But yeah, Tommy.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what Quasar said before, that it's really difficult to choose what should be my group then, because those people who are active, they try different things. And apart from being an IOG employee or Cardano Foundation representative or running my own stake pool, I've done everything else. I'm a funded proposer, I'm a CAPA, VPA, DPA, I'm a tool maker, I'm all those things. So I don't know where should I be. I do all of those roles, and I'm going to be a D rep, and I am in challenge teams and whatnot. And then I'm like, hey, where are those groups? So it really doesn't make a lot of sense for me to be structured like this.
But that's the magic. You can be everywhere if you want to participate in that way. Have your voice available in each of those communities. But you don't have to fill the role to represent all of them. That's why we have a decentralized community. But yeah, Joey.
Yeah, I just want to throw this thought out there, because if I step back as a community person, I say, hey, I have this idea. We all know there's 1,000 ideas. My hope would be that I could present that to someone who would take it to a circle and a decision be made, yes or no. So is the circle itself, we have to collaborate with IOG and Cardano Foundation and say, hey, can we actually make these things happen? Or are we just throwing out suggestions and nothing's going to happen? So we need to kind of figure out how that works as well.
Yeah, I think some of the direction that we're heading is that we want to have it run outside of IOG, and there's no hierarchy to IOG at all or CF, but that there is, sort of an organization that can actually happen sort of on its own for decision making. So that's kind of the mindset that I think we need to start building more so in, trying to create the structure that's going to work best for Catalyst to be run and decided on by the community.
You're muted, Joey.
Yeah, I think that's a goal, but right now I think the perception is that the community, even if we bring this idea of roles and categories, that the final say is IOG, and that they get the final say on it, even if we bring these ideas. So I think that's the perception at this point, that, the circle can present stuff, but we can't really make that change without IOG's permission.
No, you definitely don't need IOG's permission.
There you go. We have it recorded. Make a short clip of that and share it far and wide.
Quasar, you have some thoughts.
I do. We don't need IOG's permission was the statement there. Even if the community brings things to the circle presents them to IOG, and these concerns are addressed. I don't want to say, IOG's granting permission, but, signing off on it, agreeing to it. For me, that counts as, making change. And a lot of people are okay with that from my conversations. You know, I'm not a fan of just breaking everything off, you know, with IOG and or CF or however the cards may fall in the end. One of the things that I've wondered though is Project Catalyst has had a product manager and a project manager to kind of oversee things. What is that functional group or role in this type of community? And if this is off topic for this call, I'm happy to change it or move on.
Yes.
Yeah, no, so certainly we do have product folks that are here trying to, you know, help improve processes and set requirements for some of the back end systems that do exist. And so, you know, the intent of IO is to have a seat at the table, right? So we're not, it's not a hierarchy, right? We just want the seat at the table, and we want to, you know, continue to provide value. You know, and there's definitely things that we can influence for sure, but it is definitely, you know, not going to be IO's decision on things, but we will have an opinion. We want to, you know, submit that, and we also would like the opportunity to be a service provider. So maybe there's things where we can add value. Maybe we are supporting, you know, APIs for a time. These kinds of things, you know, where it's definitely something where we can add value, right? But it doesn't necessarily, you know, make it a hierarchy or there's permission involved.
Thanks, Sarah.
It should be permissionless and decentralized, right?
Yeah, and just to comment on the circle bringing things to IO, subcircle to circle to IO, I think that's even limiting. Like, we saw some beautiful stuff happen when Mercy stepped in and directly connected with IO and changed the scheduling and the certainty around payout scheduling and all that kind of stuff. And like, it doesn't have to be the entire circle working together. If it makes sense that two subcircles can figure it out, they should be just doing that. And I think there's beautiful mechanisms there where the circle can connect people and make sure that we're doing the right things. Joey.
Yeah, I guess my point is that, you know, I mean, I've run a lot of teams, and there's a lot of ideas always spread around, but at the end of the day, someone has to say, go, yes, we're going to do A, B, or C. And even with the example you just had with Mercy, she went to IO and IO said yes. So that was a decision. It wasn't that Mercy said yes. So we still have that process that I know it's a transition, because IO wants to transition to where we could come together, and I don't know if it's going to be a voting process or collaboration on who says yes or to go and move on something, but we're not there yet on that end process of who says yes, we're going to do this without IO's input.
Yeah, no, certainly a valid point, Joey. In that particular case, we happen to drive that process, and so, you know, we collected input, and then we actually work toward making adjustments to the process that we happen to provide as a service provider. And so that was a valid discussion, and you know, but some of these processes will be owned by people outside of IO in the near future. And so we need to start experimenting on what that looks like, right? How will that function? How will that go outside of IO, and who's picking it up, right? And so these are things that we're contemplating and thinking about and want to experiment, you know, through this process. And that's a big piece of it. I do apologize. I will likely need to drop in the next couple minutes here, but definitely really amazing discussion.
Thanks, Sarah. Quasar. And then Chris.
Thank you for that, Harris. As I learned today, and I guess a lot of us did, or learned again, or were reminded again, the communication is really one of the key fundamentals to all of this. You know, Mercy, the work that everybody's doing and has been doing is great. I think a lot of times it's delivered to people at certain times, you know, outside of the at times that they're not ready for it, or they wish they would have had the information earlier, like with Mercy and the whole, getting compensated, or the rapid funding, all those things. Like if we speed up the chain of information and communication, then I think we eliminate a lot of these little bitty, miscommunications that turn into molehills or snowballs.
Chris?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, Charles has just gone live with a video quite recently, like within the last couple of hours, and he's begun discussing some points on the governance roadmap. So if you haven't had a chance to watch it, make it a thing to dive into later. I also will have to drop off in 25 minutes, unfortunately, just to make headway.
Right. So thanks everybody for the conversations as we get through this. This is a really great conversation. But I would like to drive towards our next steps concrete for our after all the bullet.
Nori, can I raise one more point before that?
Yep.
All right, because I had some time to redo the slide. So what I just wanted to point out regarding what I showed before is that it's not so far-fetched. It's not so far away from what we're already doing. It's just a different look at things. So if you don't like the titles that were there, you could just name them after the circle members or whatever. So Mercy has been talking about funded proposals, so that's all funded proposals there. Chris and Joey have been touching upon tools and SPOs, and Felix would be about outreach and impact according to his own words, and so on and so on. So I just wanted to point it out that it's not something brand new, but it's just restructuring our mindset.
Yeah, nice work.
Yeah, great. All right, folks, I'm going to depart. Thank you so much. Appreciate your work
Cheers, Harry.
and your time. Thank you.
So for the Polis poll and the after town hall, what are the next steps we need to do to get the community voice and opinions and everything? Felix, do you need any help with the after town hall? Are you coordinating with people to get that kicked off and ready for next week? If you're able to unmute. So
well, I think our last meeting, he agreed to set it up, and myself and Reese both said we'd try to be there to help him, and maybe Quasar if he's available. But I'm going to try my best to be there to help him.
okay, that's awesome. And then Quasar, yes, the Polis account will have both the question area where you can add more statements, and then the reporting stuff so you can see the results. And there's not a whole lot to it. It automatically does the sorting and grouping and analysis. It's really just the results part of it. So we'll have both of those available to everybody. Chris?
Yeah, it's just a question as to whether we want to go live with the Polis poll tomorrow or next Friday. My instincts in terms of being able to get into the Catalyst mailer, my instincts are let's not do it tomorrow. Let's give it a few more days. And then, we're going to run after town hall next week. That's going to be a great first wave of interaction. Mm-hmm. And then that's going to be potentially followed up with it being in everybody's inbox on that Friday. Obviously everybody needs to maybe do their bit to make sure that people realize that it's in their inbox. I know the open rates are pretty good on the Catalyst mailer, but this is the internet and email. So the point is we can certainly get it ready for next Friday. And I would imagine all we would require is just that the Polis account obviously set up with all of the statements, and then we'd want a blurb with a very clear call to action. I might not be able to organise that tomorrow, and then I'm sadly off for 2 weeks, so I can try to delegate to Harris to make sure that that's managed.
Okay, I think that's a really good plan. Here's the document again. If you can all go in and add any statements that you think should seed it, I can go through and kick it off tomorrow. And then maybe the first pass will be just to send the URL around to you all, and you can add statements to it as you read through them. And then once we get to a critical mass, you can start sharing them to your communities. And then we can do the broadcast next Friday with the mail out. But also we can do tweets. We all have platforms where we can connect our communities.
Gotcha.
Socialize it.
You want to bring it up so we can take a look at it? And maybe there's some I'm going to be taking off, especially after today's. I don't want to challenge IO on a poll, and there's one I was just trying to be a little whimsical.
I wasn't even sure there was any. Was there any challenges in there? What was the? What were the contentious statements here? I tell you what. Can I give an opinion? I don't think with the very first statement in the poll should be around. Should the circle be paid? I think you should probably not have that as the very first thing that people see.
Yeah. Okay.
It should be how much should they be paid, right?
Yeah, I think it's more just like I don't think we would want to give the semiotics that around this is about compensation, right?
Yeah. So I'll float the organizational questions to the top around form function. There's some stuff in here I'm highlighting that are questions. So it would be nice if we could reword those as statements that people can say yes or no to.
Right. I put that in there so you can reword it.
Okay. And then, yeah, I think these is a good start. And we don't really need to get this document perfect, because once Polis is launched, you can add your own statements yourselves. So it's a growing conversation. So I think it's possible to just keep evolving it as we go.
Is there a way to go back when you're answering?
As in to change your perspective.
Yeah, because I filled one Polis poll and I couldn't go back, and I was like, shit, I made a mistake.
I'm not sure. I thought there might have been. I thought if you reload it, I'm not sure.
And
I thought
another question: are they in random order, or can you decide which order they come in?
I think they show up in the order they have been submitted. But you can't edit submitted stuff to Polis. You just can edit some configurations from the admin side.
Just whilst we're waiting for that, and okay, I'm not asking who put this, but is that statement around clinical psychology, is that really relevant?
That was me. I was just trying to be funny. Should we have a lot of experience in dealing with people's behavior?
Yeah, it did make me chuckle.
You can remove that, Nori, please.
It did definitely make me chuckle. Because someone's response would be, no, they should have 21, or no, 15 is fine.
And I also put the ones in there about the decision making between IOG and us, so we can remove those too. I don't want to start that conversation. We're not quite ready for that, I don't think.
Okay. Do you want to go through and just strike them out?
Yeah, I'll go through later and just remove them.
Okay, but is everybody happy with the plan to just kind of put a few more notes on here? I'll kick it off and then send it to you all first, and then you can add statements, review them, And then as you're ready, share them with your communities. And then next Friday, we'll do the mass broadcast through the newsletter. And we can probably also announce it at town hall.
It's always the right answer.
Town hall.
Glad to have some other hitchhikers around. Did you bring a towel?
Couldn't tell me that's well.
Okay. Is there anything else we need to coordinate? We talked about doing some Twitter spaces. Are we going to start kicking that off, Quasar, like next week as well? Coordinate?
Absolutely, we can do that. What I've been doing is just booking a little bit of time on the Cardano over coffee, that 11:15 to to close the show out. Even Epoch's End, and so far, the community's been interested. They've wanted to know. It's been positive, and I like joining other people's spaces, but I also like doing it through through my account or through the hard fork as well. I'll be doing a lot of spaces over the next week for proposers to come and pitch to the community and look at the challenges and collaborating. So I can work it in there as well. So yes, the Twitter spaces, and I will be documenting and returning that information and stuff to the team.
Okay. Would it be useful to have, like, in Slack, just note all the Twitter spaces that might be happening, just if people want to join or listen in?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't want to speak for everyone. It can get overwhelming already. Slack, throwing a bunch of Twitter spaces on there could also do that. I'm happy to share or send it to people's Twitter account. I don't know how everyone likes to be contacted on these things, but the Twitter door is open. The front door is open for everyone to come at any time.
Can I make a request that that maybe Danny gets given the Twitter spaces before they start? That would be helpful. And maybe in advance, if there's any schedule that we're going to try to cook up, it might just be useful just for Danny to have a line of sight on that. So then he and for that matter, Tim Richmond, the marketing and communications lead within Catalyst, so then they can publish in advance, and then maybe have IO Twitter repost and at least be aware and on sides to support and share as and when needed.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't know about it in advance, there's not too much that we can do. That's the point.
That's a good point. And I know last time we ran a Twitter space governance week thing, we had a calendar of events put together by Ada Cafe. That might be a cool thing to try and do again. Joey?
Yeah, Chris, I know you had mentioned the Catalyst Weekly mailer.
Yeah.
Is that something that you'll take the lead on, or?
Yeah, I'll take the lead on it. I'll take the lead to delegate to Harry. Listen. If I've got 15 minutes tomorrow, I'll write a paragraph and I'll write a blurb. Right. It's just that after tomorrow, I'm going to be pretty ineffective. So I'm pretty ineffective right now. My head hurts, but I'll do my best to get something done tomorrow. And if not, it will be ready. Danny will know that it's coming, and then Harris will just get it done.
Quasar, you dropped off for a bit, but we were talking just before that about the Twitter. Quasar, you dropped off. And when we did governance week last time, Ada Cafe had a calendar of events and Twitter spaces kind of talking about governance week last time. Is it possible to do a similar kind of calendar maybe, or talking about? Is it possible?
100%.
Okay. Any other next steps that we want to coordinate on over the next week or so? Any other next steps that we want to coordinate on over the next week or so? Right. So it sounds like we have three major thrusts right now. It's the Polis stuff, the Twitter Spaces, and then the after town hall. And then we'll do as much coordination we can to push notifications out through the IOG newsletter that happens at end of weeks. Yeah, anything else, Tommy?
There's some sort of onboarding to Circle that I could perhaps use. I would like to know, for example, who are my colleagues, because I'm not entirely sure who is part of the Circle.
Let me see. I think we might have slides for when we did our onboarding to the original Circle. But also Nadia is a really good mentor person because she served for the last 4 months in the role too. So, but let me check with the admin team to see if we have any materials. Joey.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how long is Felix going to be away, because you won't be here for the after town hall. But is Felix coming back for that, or is he going to do it remote from somewhere?
I will be there. I'm only half of today, but for the rest, you can fully count on me.
Yeah, I wasn't kidding. I would like to know who are part of the Circle. Is Riz and Mercy still in the Circle, or?
Yes.
Yes.
There's still the 7. We may have different people subbing from time to time, but Mercy has not stepped down. Reese is still around. Quasar is replacing Dimitri at the meetings, and you're replacing Nadia. So I think those are the big changes. Oh, and Felix, of course, replacing Bullish Dumpling. And Chris.
And as long as I have a closet to hide in, I'll be here.
We need to find a way to get you out of your closet anyway.
I kind of liked Bullish. Can we call him Bullish Felix?
No, she will.
No, I'm Felix.
Can we call you a bear, Felix?
Well, Tommy, darling, you can call me however you want.
Yeah. You couldn't even call Bullish. She would get you would be in trouble.
Felix, go back in the closet.
Joey,
I'm in the closet.
No,
we have any of
actually,
these?
You need,
Yeah.
you need to
Not
take
Tommy.
Joey out. You take Joey out of the closet and then go in.
No, Tommy, look, actually, it's the first time I'm getting out of my closet. I'm not in my office, you see.
Felix is out and about. It's amazing.
And Nori just placed an order for Staples, so they're on the way.
This is,
I
this is a red swing lines. It's from Office Space. It's the they don't
All
have
right,
these.
we have you covered.
Is
Yeah.
this meeting adjourned?
Yeah, I'm gonna jump off now, folks.
Okay.
Good to see you all. Thanks for everybody's input today.
Thanks.
See you,
I hope you feel better.
yeah, thanks guys. I probably won't see you until I'm back. So yeah, enjoy the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah,
I'll be away too after a week. So
enjoy your time away, Joey.
Yeah.
thank you guys.
Have a good summer break.
Take care, everyone.
All right.
Bye.
actually, I realized there's a real reality out here. there are real people and houses and stuff. This is amazing.
Yeah, and those fast-moving objects are called cars. Avoid them. Don't jump in front of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nori, if you would please put June on the list for receiving the invites, because she'll take my seat when I'm not around.
Okay. And you sent me her email?
Yeah, you added her to Slack the other day with her.
Okay. Yeah, I'll add her to the meeting. And I think I've added Quasar to the meetings as well now. So we should have a full.
And Tommy.
And one
Tommy's been-
important point what Kaiser mentioned last week and the last meeting. It's envisioned that circle reps speak with each other. Speak with each other.
True.
Right?
You're
still
asking too
catalyst.
much.
It's still catalyst. It's still about exploring the highest potential of human collaboration. This mostly
Yeah,
doesn't work if
that's-
we don't communicate. So
Dude, that's pushing it too far. I'm out. Bye bye.
right.
Yeah, well,
Thanks, everybody.
Tommy came here and shielded his project, his project like he was on a Twitter space. I can't believe it. And of course he left.
Yeah.
Weird that. So. Well, thank
all
you
right,
all.
guys.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Have a great trip, Nori.
Thanks. We'll see you on the other side.
See you on the other side. Have a great trip, Felix. See you. Q.
Safe travels.
Bye bye.